How's this for a clickbait headline? Do chicks ruin comic books? Can chicks lead comic books? Sometimes. It's complicated. I took a look at these books. Blade Runner 2019, Resonant, Star Pig, Jane Foster's Valkyrie, which I heard was decent. Fearless with Captain Marvel, androgynous, breastless, buttless Captain Marvel with very, very large fists. This was shockingly bad. You should. I almost recommend it just for the cringe. And Sarah of the Royal Stars. What I found was there's a lot of these first issues with young girl leads. Wow, girl power books must really be selling well. Not exactly. A lot of first issues and a lack of 20th issues is telling you something about the staying power of these female-led books. They launch a first issue, people take a chance on it, but by issue 5, it's canceled. The only reason Captain Marvel is still going is because there's a billion-dollar movie of the same name giving the book free advertising. I think by issue 8, it's selling in the 20,000s. That's enough to keep it from getting canceled, but it's not great. I think Captain Marvel has been canceled and rebooted more than half a dozen times. The question should be, can mainstream comics write female leads? Absolutely not. Mainstream comics are trapped by political correctness. If they wrote multifaceted female characters with depths and flaws, the Twitter psychos would call the creative team misogynist and racist. OMG, they are garbage people. Let's cancel them. Then they announce a boycott for a product they never bought in the first place. How do I know this? Because I have repeatedly seen them called out on Twitter. They say they're going to stop buying a series. Someone will say, prove it. Post a picture of you with the old issues you bought. But the SJWs almost never can because they haven't been supporting these books in the first place. SJWs rarely buy the things that they complain about. EVS had a transsexual guest on to talk about comics, and they admitted that they didn't have the money to buy comics. I thought to myself, you don't have $4 to buy one comic a month? If you're a fan of comics, you're probably going to come up with the $10 a month to buy at least 2 comics. Which proved my point. SJWs worm their way into an industry simply to corrupt and destroy it. You think the Milkshake Girls give a damn about comics? If you asked them to name their favorite comic, they would look puzzled and name Garfield because I love kitties. Gail Simone said in an interview that she stopped reading comics in high school and started again a few decades later. I thought to myself, how are you working in this industry? Then I read her work and I understood. She is a hardcore, man-hating feminist. Of course she's going to get hired. Most of the women in mainstream comics write as if they have never read a comic in their life. When you read them, you're not going to find a compelling, exciting story. You find page after page of feminist propaganda, and as a consequence, their books sell very poorly, but Marvel can't fire them. DC tried to fire Gail, but she complained to her followers on Twitter, who amplified her voice and actually got her rehired. But oddly enough, her followers don't actually buy her comics. What this did is tell the industry that once you hire a woman, she'll be almost unfireable. Gail Simone actually made it more difficult for women to get hired in the industry. Good job, Gail. So no, mainstream comics literally can't write female characters, at least not well, because they can't have flaws. But flaws are what make for rich character development. Read Hotshots or any female characters in mainstream comics. They are almost flawless cookie-cutter characters. They have humble brag problems. OMG, I'm a member of too many superhero teams while I am doing my postdoc at MIT and in multiple relationships with transsexual lesbian midgets. Girl, you're fabulous. I know, right? Alejandro, where are those breadsticks? So I took a look at a bunch of these books with female leads. It's bland young female leads who they are careful not to make too attractive. The girls are intelligent, full of self-confidence, and supremely competent in everything they do. You will see plenty of 120-pound women beating the hell out of 200-pound men. The stories and art are strictly paint by the numbers. They are following a checklist. Little brown girl? Check. Challenges to overcome? Nope. And that is the problem. Characters need to face challenges, battle self-doubts, rise to the occasion, and overcome these challenges. Mainstream female characters have no room to grow because they are already almost perfect. And they use a weird technique where they dumb the male characters down or make them malevolent and callow in order to elevate the female protagonist, which is completely unnecessary. Plus, it violates verisimilitude. We know men don't act like they are portrayed in these books. Heck, we know women don't act like this. But gender roles are apparently for fascists. And the way they treat men is malicious. It feels like the writers have a chip on their shoulder concerning men. Anyway, the best of a very bad bunch is about a little one-legged black girl and her family. It has some silly scenes where she throws a crutch aside to help her brother get up, who has 2 functioning legs, and yet manages to trip on a plot device while running for his life. His sister, who is on crutches, manages not to trip because she has plot balance. It's a completely unnecessary scene. They make the brother a damsel in distress, just so they can have the girl do something stunning and brave. It's really, really obvious and stupid. Another scene has the father out walking into town, and he comes across a twisted, degenerate, half-zombie character, who of course has blonde hair. It's just an unnecessarily racist scene, and it's an obvious plot device. It's there to make the dad look generous and capable, and to make the blonde guy look sick and twisted. Because white people, am I right? But these 2 cliches aside, the story is strong. They're in a cabin in the woods in a post-apocalyptic world where demons or space aliens or something periodically come down and take over people's minds, making them dangerous. It's deliberately kept vague because they are going to do a slow reveal over the course of several issues, I assume. It reminds me of the book The Road. But I think the problem it will run into the second issue is that very few people want to read a story where the lead characters are a bunch of little kids. It limits your audience by a huge amount. So I think this series is going to fizzle very quickly. But as you can see here, the art combines, works really, really well in this post-apocalyptic world. They're out in this cabin in the woods. For some reason, they need to, the father needs to go into town, and he comes across that little zombie guy who needs the crickets, because the crickets tell you when this monster comes, when the I don't know what it is, if it's a space aliens or demons or government project gone mad, or porthole into another dimension, kind of like The Fog or The Mist or whatever the hell that Stephen King book was. But it's good. They set up this encroaching horror, this creeping horror, and the use of the crickets. They chirp when the madness comes. That's why the guy wants one. And so apparently when you have to be unconscious when this thing approaches, when this madness comes. And if you're not unconscious, you have to meditate. The world is empty and full of nothing. You are of the world. Yeah, it works really well. Okay, so this scene, this stuff like this, when they put this in a book, I don't know. It's like they never stop to think for just a moment. Is this scene necessary? Does it add to the story, or is it cliche, hackneyed, trite? They're both running. She's on crutches. He's a perfectly healthy young boy with his crickets around his neck. He trips. Apparently, is he leaving her behind? Is that what he's doing? That's what it looks like. God, I didn't notice that until just now. It looks like he's outpacing her, which is, you don't need to do that to your characters. So she bravely throws her crutch aside, the crutch that she's using to walk on. She picks him up, or gets him on his feet with one hand and one crutch. That is very cheap. It's a very cheap thing to do to a book. It doesn't add anything. Okay, so they got their little brother here, and I guess maybe the brother is more affected than most. I don't know. The thing, they don't tell you the whole story. It's kept very vague. So they have him, I guess, strapped down, and they need to tie him down some more. I don't know. It doesn't all make sense. It's so she supports him she ties a rope to his leg and hangs him up by his feet so he can't do anything. I don't know. Maybe they turn into werewolves or vampires. They turn into something. So you either have to be unconscious or tied down or something, or you have to meditate. And so this encroaching Lovecraftian horror is coming, and she's trying to meditate. He's meditating. She's trying to meditate, but it's not working. So there was a horror story. It was kind of a pseudo zombie story. It was basically the same vein as zombies. I think it was called The Hate, and it was a book or story that they were thinking about trying to turn it into a movie, and it followed a zombie outline where there was some kind of disease that once you were infected with it, you didn't hate other people infected with it, but you hated people who weren't infected with it. You looked at them as if they were monsters and you had to kill them. And it kind of reminds me of this. Anyway, this was the best of a bad bunch, but again, I think it'll fizzle out. So leave a like, a comment, and subscribe.